and the fight broke out. And the rest was revealed to me from other people, including my wife. And we left the cocktail lounge and we drove home. And once we got home, the argument became violent. I ended up putting my wife in a hospital that night with a concussion from the beating I gave her. The only thing that I really remember is that I woke up in a parking lot the following morning of the place that I worked. And I had this feeling of total impending doom, knowing that I had done something the night before that I just couldn't live with. And I just couldn't live this way anymore. And as I was driving south on the freeway, I looked down at the seat alongside of me, and there was my gun, my .38. And that thought crossed my mind, that if I found a nice quiet spot along the freeway, take my gun and put it in my mouth and suck on it like a soda straw as I pulled the trigger, I'd never have to feel this way ever again.
This is The Bottom Line. I'm Gary Thiemann in Los Angeles. Alcoholism, untreated, inevitably ends in premature death. For those fortunate enough to find a program of progress such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, life takes on a new meaning. Life becomes a gift. Life is a gift for Gary W., one day at a time.
My name is Gary, and I'm an alcoholic. I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. And my father was an alcoholic, and my mother was an Al-Anon. In fact, my father spent a lot of time on the Bowery in New York and in the gutters around the city of Buffalo. As a young man, a young kid, I always thought to myself that that's one person I was never going to be like, and that was my father. And throughout my childhood and my young life, we had a very strong love-hate relationship. Lo and behold, a day came when I was out with the boys and reached out and I grabbed that bottle of wine. And I took that first drink. I was about 13 years old at the time, and that jug of wine did for me that was magic that I just couldn't understand at the time, but it just took away all those inhibitions and made me feel a part of. It seemed like from that point on, me and alcohol had developed a very strong love relationship. It stayed with me for a long time. When I graduated from high school and went into the Navy, my drinking increased considerably and took me a lot of places and did a lot of things for me. Always, again, making me feel a part of, giving me the courage that I could chase the girls and compete with the rest of the guys on ship. And when I got out of the Navy, just before I got out of the Navy, I got married to my childhood sweetheart back in New York. And the strange parallel there is that her dad was a recovering alcoholic. And at that point in time, my father had gotten into Alcoholics Anonymous and was recovering from his disease of alcoholism. But my wife and I came out from, migrated out to California. And once I got to California, I got into the aerospace industry. And there, once again, my drinking continued. And after about 7 years in aerospace, my alcohol consumption, even though it progressed, wasn't creating any problems as far as my family life. My wife and I was getting along, and we were raising a family. I had 2 children at the time, and I was capable of being a loving husband and a good father. And then a point came when I left aerospace and I went into to the sheriff's department for Los Angeles County. And at that point in time, my drinking really progressed. And I was drinking heavily to mask the fears that was inherent to the job, and always trying to feel more of a man. And the only way that I could do that, because I had to deny my fears. I couldn't admit to anybody that I was afraid, especially the people that I worked with. So that gave me the excuse then to spend more times in the bars, away from the wife and the family, and to be with my peers that I worked with. My drinking progressed, and it came a point in time to where that love relationship that I started when I was a kid back in New York turned on me, and alcohol was no longer working. And needless to say, my marriage had dwindled, and my relationship with my children had gone to pot, and by this time there were 4 children instead of 2. And my home started to become a battleground. My wife, she was drinking also, and she had contracted, as I did, the disease of alcoholism. We didn't know it at the time, but we came to know that later on. But as my drinking progressed, I realized that there was really something drastically wrong with me, and that I wasn't really normal. And I started looking and searching for solutions. And one day, when I went to work, my partner didn't show up, and I was teamed up with another man. And this guy was always very happy, very jovial, always had a kind word to say to everybody, and I just couldn't understand it. In fact, I despised the guy who was always so happy. But I decided that night that I would ask him, what it was that he had that I didn't have. And in sharing with me, he told me that he was a Christian and that he had found Jesus Christ. And that gave me an indication that maybe, just maybe, organized religion would be an answer to my dilemma. And so I went home and I talked to my wife about it. And that Sunday I took my son, my oldest boy, and we went off to church. And of course, when I was in church, I ended up getting saved, and then I got saved, and then I got saved, and I was always looking for that emotional high of that the church had to offer when you came forward and got saved. But after a point in time, I was feeling very uncomfortable because I wasn't, the church that I was going to at the time, they really didn't believe in drinking, and so I was becoming a closet alcoholic, and I was doing my drinking at home and hiding it. I was very uncomfortable with that within myself. I didn't realize it then, but I do today. And of course, at the time when I was at that point, I did the only thing that was logical for me. I changed churches, and I went to the Catholic Church because there I had the feeling that I could drink with impunity. And the only thing that actually happened was that I became very active within the church because I was trying to find the answer to all these here feelings that was going on inside of inadequacy and of fear and frustration. And it really wasn't curing anything between my wife and I, or my children and I. My children were always afraid of me, and my wife and I, we just couldn't communicate and we couldn't get along. And so my drinking continued to progress. And the battleground in the home continued. And when my wife and I would start arguing, and I'd start redecorating the house in my anger, my kids would always run to the back of the house and the older two would take the two younger ones and play games with them and turn their stereo up real loud so that they couldn't hear Mom and Dad out in the living room or in the kitchen throwing things and yelling at one another and calling them all those nasty, nasty names. And it came to the point to where I finally once again realized that there was something wrong with me and that the marriage was totally on the rocks. My wife was talking about divorce. She had already looked to consult with an attorney, and it was really at the end. And my kids no longer wanted anything to do with me. They very seldom had anything to say to me. And so I got off of an early morning shift and I came home. I did my normal routine. I took out a bottle of scotch and I drank until I passed out. Came to a couple hours later and realized that I didn't have to go to work that night. So I asked my wife, I says, why don't we go out tonight? Maybe we can enjoy a nice meal. And she agreed, and so I had a couple more drinks before it came dinner time, and we went out to our local bar that we always went to, and we sat down and we had a nice dinner. And of course we had a couple of cocktails before dinner. We had a bottle of wine during dinner. And after dinner, we were enjoying each other's company, and so I had a couple of after-dinner drinks. And they taste so good, I asked the wife, I says, why don't we go into the cocktail lounge and have a couple more drinks, and maybe we could dance and have a good time tonight. And so we migrated into the cocktail lounge, and there again I had a couple more after dinner drinks, and I slipped into an infamous blackout because I was a blackout drinker. And the fight broke out. And the rest was revealed to me from other people, including my wife. And we left the cocktail lounge and we drove home, and once we got home, the argument became violent. I ended up putting my wife in a hospital that night with a concussion from the beating I gave her. The only thing that I really remember is that I woke up in a parking lot the following morning of the place that I worked, and I had this feeling of total impending doom, knowing that I had done something the night before that I just couldn't live with. And I just couldn't live this way anymore. And so I walked into the place where I work, into the station, and I walked up to a friend of mine and I asked him for help. And a friend of mine was a sergeant, and he put me in this little room, and he gave me in this room there was a desk with a telephone on it, a chair, and he gave me a list of names, and he told me to pick any one of the names, and that I might find an answer to the problem that I had. And so I looked about halfway down the list and I made a telephone call. It was a guy by the name of John. And John told me that he would like me to meet him down at Denny's Sand Canyon, and I couldn't understand that at the time because, John was a working man like me, and he was on his way out the door when I called to go to work. And I couldn't understand why he'd take time off of work to talk to me. So I decided to get in my truck and drive down the freeway to Denny's Sand Canyon. And as I was driving south on the freeway, I looked down at the seat alongside of me, and there was my gun, my .38. And that thought crossed my mind, that if I found a nice quiet spot along the freeway, take my gun and put it in my mouth and suck on it like a soda straw as I pulled the trigger, I'd never have to feel this way ever again. And so as I drove down the freeway, I looked for that spot, and I ended up at Denny's Sand Canyon. When I pulled into the parking lot of Denny's Sand Canyon, there was a gentleman standing in front of the restaurant, and he had a book in his hand. And as I walked up to the front door of Denny's, he looked at me and he says, "You must be Gary." And I couldn't understand how he could recognize me when I had never met the man before. But anyways, John and I walked in there, and we sat there drinking coffee for about about 2 hours, and John shared his experience, strength, and hope with me. And at the end of the conversation that we had, he gave me this book, and it was a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he told me to take that book home and read the first 164 pages. And he told me, he says, Gary, he says, if you find an answer to your dilemma within the first 164 pages of that book, he says, buy yourself a book. But either way, he says, I want you to send that book back to me because that book saved my life. And so I went back up home, and when I walked into the house, my wife was still in bed. And I walked into the bedroom, and I sat down on the end of the bed. And I looked her in the eyes, and the tears just started rolling down my face. And at that point in time, I uttered these words, and unbeknownst to me at the time, it was the first half of the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I told her that I was an alcoholic. And at that very moment, I knew to the fiber of my very being that I was powerless over alcohol. And that I couldn't handle the stuff anymore. And I realized that alcohol was the substance that had totally taken me down and made me violate every moral standard that I had ever set for myself. And from that day on, I started on this here road of recovery.
The road to recovery was an emotional adjustment as well as a spiritual journey. And by the grace of God, Gary is surrounded by family and friends that love him very much.
You know, some of the gifts that God has given me is just phenomenal. My wife and I, this coming May, will celebrate 33 years of marriage. My 4 children aren't afraid of me anymore. In fact, my oldest daughter shares with me the 3 most precious things in her life, and that's my 3 grandchildren. And you know, none of those grandchildren has ever seen Papa drunk.
Share God's victory to a world that's dying every day. We need to reach them. We need to tell them of a better way. We're all a part of God's family. We're sisters and brothers, caring for each other in a special way. 'Cause a family will always be there. This world is know that through prayer for a world that's dying every day, we've got power to reach them. We've got love to show them there's a
You've been listening to The Bottom Line featuring Gary's story. The Bottom Line features only real stories of recovering alcoholics addicts with the sole purpose of planting recovery seeds. This show is produced for Armed Forces Radio Worldwide. I'm Gary Thiemann. Until next time, God bless you, and share the message, won't you? This has been a GRT production.